Good morning, everyone. We'll begin the call here in about 2 minutes. Good morning, everyone. We'll begin in about 1 minute here. Thanks for joining us. Well, good morning, everyone. This is Neil Sperling here with Financial Markets. I'm so glad you joined us here today to take a look at some opportunities with the Secure and CARES Act. Joining us here today is Bob Vashko with Advanced Sales at Lincoln Financial, and also Craig Geiger, Regional Sales Director at Lincoln. During our call here today, if you have any questions during the webinar, please type those in the GoToWebinar question area, and we'll get those addressed during or at the end of the call. And also, for the $50 Amazon gift card, you must be present to win. So stick around at the balance of the webinar, and we'll be doing that drawing at the end to see who wins the $50 Amazon gift card. So with that, no further ado, we'll go with Mr. Craig Geiger to start us off. Go ahead, Craig.
Thanks, Neil. We really do appreciate, me and Bob really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you today. Really what we wanted to do is really walk through some, I think, big opportunities in your book of business. Obviously, during COVID, during all the things that are going on in the markets right now, it's all about getting back in front of clients, creating opportunities, and really helping them fix key issues that might be happening in their lives. And really Secure kind of got pushed in the background for a while because of the CARES Act, which of course came out more recently during the COVID-19 pandemic. So really what we're going to talk about is Bob's going to walk us through the Secure Act kind of just from a high perspective, and kind of bullet point it a little bit and kind of explain some various aspects of that act. A couple things to note though, when you think about the Secure Act, and obviously that really affected the qualified side when it comes to IRAs, 401ks, is if you think about non-spousal Benny IRAs, there's not a lot of carriers right now that are accepting that kind of business where you can do the 10-year stretch. And Lincoln is one of those companies that actually is still doing that type of business. I wanted to make sure that you are aware that Lincoln is one of those companies that does take that kind of business as you're kind of going back and getting in front of clients where maybe that might come up. Also, the other thing where we're seeing a lot of traction, again, in the qualified space, is Roth, and more importantly, partial Roth conversions. Because if you think about it, over the last 10 years, the market was great. A lot of people that were maybe thinking about doing a Roth conversion or even doing partial Roth conversions just didn't want to do it because the market was on fire. They didn't want to pay all those taxes. But in an environment like we are now, where obviously we could potentially have a V-shaped recovery, there might be more market volatility to come. There's a lot of uncertainty there, but at the same time, one thing that we know is happening is we're adding more and more money to our national debt with all the things that we're doing in Washington right now. So if we think about the future, of tax rates, where could they be? Could they be on the rise? And if they are going to be on the rise, maybe now is the time to start doing Roth or partial Roth conversions and start converting some of that money over now and then having more benefits for the beneficiaries later. And then, of course, we'll also talk about the CARES Act. We'll talk about one of the things in there that I think has gotten a lot of traction, especially for a lot of clients out there that might be very equity heavy and are realizing that for the first time, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, is that maybe they want to look at the COVID-19 withdrawal options that they can utilize to maybe safeguard some of those assets to still be able to lock in their gains, protect those assets, and continue to grow them with a fixed index annuity. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Bob, who's going to walk us through Secure, and we'll go into the CARES Act, and then we'll open it up for questions, and then we'll go from there. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks, buddy, and thank you all for having us today. Can you see my screen, Craig?
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you.
Awesome. Just making sure before I start rock and rolling. So again, thank you all for taking the time today to join us. I want to take the next 20 minutes or so to make this time well spent for y'all. And just as Craig said, we wanted to just kind of go over these two major pieces of legislation because CARES Act kind of came in, March 27th, and frankly sucked the air out of the room in terms of changes to the IRA and the qualified plan space. But Secure is a permanent change, or as permanent as things come with our Congress. CARES is supposed to go away at the end of the year, hopefully. Hopefully we have no reason to extend it. So CARES is kind of a limited time offer, but Secure, again, that came out first, and it'll be with us long after COVID-19 is a distant memory or way back in our rear view mirror. So I'd like to start today just by going back to Secure. Again, came out at the beginning of this year, and how it impacted, the IRA space. Now, as you see on the screen, and these pieces are available to y'all, Secure did a lot of great things. It did a lot of great things for retirement plans. It made it a lot easier for smaller businesses to start plans, to enhance their existing plans, to form multi-employer plans with other businesses in their geographic location. It also gave them people incentive to contribute as well. In the IRA space, it did some great things because it removed your age limit on making contributions. So long as you had earned income, you can make contributions to your IRA when you're 98 years old. And they also pushed back the RMD start date, a little less confusing now. It's age 72 versus age 70 and a half. So if you had not yet turned 70 and a half in 2019, your new RMD start date was 72. So that pushed it back by about 18 months. So all these things that Secure did for the plans and for IRA owners is great, but it all came at a cost. This all cost the federal government money. And it was projected, Congressional Budget Office said all this stuff would, over the next 10 years, cost the federal government about $16 billion. And Secure was ostensibly supposed to be a revenue neutral bill. So we got to make the $16 billion back somehow. Where are we going to get it from? And the answer was, well, we're going to stick it to IRA beneficiaries by basically eliminating the stretch IRA option for people, for most people who inherit in 2020 or later. Now, if someone had already inherited prior to January 1st, 2020, and they were stretching, they're fine, they're grandfathered in. Business as usual. For those people who inherit in 2020 or later, most people cannot do a lifetime stretch. They have to empty that account out in 10 years. Now, there's a little more flexibility because you don't have to take money out every single year. You just have to make sure it's empty by the end of the 10 years after the original owner died. So you can take out everything up front. You can take out everything at the end. You can take out any combination in between, so long as it's empty by the end of the 10 years. Now, we think there's a great planning opportunity there in terms of beneficiary reviews of your qualified accounts, namely your IRAs and your qualified retirement plans, to make sure that the beneficiaries who are listed on these IRAs, who are listed on these 401ks, to make sure those bennies still work post-Secure. It's a great way to make inroads with those bennies if you have not met the kids before, saying, look, Congress made some changes to how you take these accounts when mom or dad passed away. Wasn't sure if you knew about them, but I want take a minute to kind of cover your options to make sure you're prepared to make the right choice for yourself when the time comes. Just reviewing those accounts can open up opportunities because you might find out about other IRAs or other qualified retirement plan accounts elsewhere that you don't have yourself. And the client might say, hey, look, I really appreciate you letting me know about this. I've got some other accounts that you don't have that the other agent is not really talking to me about this Secure stuff, but you are. maybe you should take a look at these accounts. Maybe you are the new best steward for this money. So there's client acquisition and account acquisition just by doing the Benny reviews. And as Craig said a few minutes ago, the other opportunity here with Secure is the idea of Roth conversions. The idea that if you do convert your IRA to a Roth, your kids as beneficiaries still have to empty the account out within 10 years. But the beauty of the Roth is that, as we all know, it's all tax-free growth. So if you passed away today and you left it to your kid could leave that account alone for 9 years, 364 days. Let that account compound tax-free for 10 years and then take all the money at the end of 10 years. That's a pretty good deal for the kids. Now, with Roth conversions, of course, the big catch in the beginning is that mom or dad have to pay the taxes on the money they convert. Now, Roth conversions are not necessarily for everybody, but they are there for those clients or those heirs who are particularly tax sensitive. And they say, look, I don't really care who pays the taxes. I just want to make sure that as little goes to the IRS as possible. So maybe I should convert now. Maybe while my account is still down a little bit from our all-time highs at the beginning of the year. As Craig said earlier, convert while your account's depressed. Let the IRS participate in your losses, but not your gains. So convert now. All right, convert while it's down. And then when you get back to par and you start growing above par again, all that tax-free growth is for you while you're alive, and it's tax-free for the kids after they pass as well. If converting the Roth all at one time is too expensive from a tax standpoint, consider phasing in over several years. If you're in the 24% tax bracket, convert just enough today to take you to the tippy top of 24%, but not $1 over. And just do that over a series of several years. That way you have phased into a full Roth conversion, but you never jack your tax bracket up from 24% to say 32% to accomplish the conversion. Keep your tax bracket low. Don't artificially inflate it for the sake of a Roth conversion. So good conversations there as well. Again, for those tax sensitive families, often those are higher net worth families. Maybe mom and dad are not high net worth themselves, but the kids are. Maybe the kids are in a super high tax bracket and mom and dad are not. That's a really great Roth conversion opportunity because you want to convert the lowest tax bracket you can. Just as an aside though, with Secure, there are people who can still stretch. Surviving spouse, it's business as usual. Surviving spouse can stretch. Surviving spouse can flip it to a spousal rollover IRA and make it their own. Minor children can stretch, but only while they're still minors, and they have to be minors of the deceased IRA owner or participant. So if you pass away and you leave something to your daughter who is 10, she can stretch that for, another 8 years, maybe as much as 16 years, depending on your state and when the child is considered to be an adult. Once they turn an adult, then they have 10 years from that date to empty the account. Disabled beneficiaries and chronically ill beneficiaries, you must be disabled or chronically ill on the day you inherit the IRA. If you are, then you can stretch over your lifetime as well. And last but not least, beneficiaries who are not more than 10 years younger than the deceased owner participant. That usually ties back to a brother or a sister who inherits the account. Usually they're not that far apart in age. If you are 10 years or less younger than the deceased owner, you don't have to be a brother or sister. That's what we usually see. You can still stretch if you want to as well. So some opportunities there. Now, what's really interesting, and Craig mentioned this as well, is that there are vendors out there, there are custodians out there who are not taking these new post-secure Benny IRAs. And I can't speak for these other companies as to why they're not taking them. What I've heard anecdotally is that they just don't see a business incentive to write a contract that they know has to walk out within 10 years. Lincoln is happy to take that business. Lincoln is happy to offer a home to your post-secure IRA beneficiaries. So if you have one of those walk in the door, you're looking for a place, a really, really great company with a lot of different product options to help those people, we are happy to take that post-secure Benny IRA business. Now I'm about halfway through. I want to switch on over to CARES if I can, because that is, again, a temporary piece of legislation. At least I hope it is temporary. But it is definitely, large and in charge on everyone's mind right now. I know there's news right now about people, want to extend that unemployment protection of $600 a week. There is talk about, bonuses for first responders, things like that. There's talk about another round of those coronavirus checks, and that's where I'll start on this page, are those coronavirus checks. Now, I'm not sure if the second round of coronavirus checks, if it does actually happen, if it'll look exactly the same as the first round from back in March did. But, here's how it played out, is that, you got $1,200 if you were an individual, you got $2,400 if you were a joint filer, and you got $500 additional for each dependent child. Now, this money was an advance tax credit for tax year 2020. Normally, you don't really avail yourself of a tax credit until you file your taxes the following year on April 15th. But what Congress did with CARES said is we're going to give everyone this tax credit, and you can take the credit now in the form of cash versus waiting until April 15th, 2021 to leverage the credit. The nice thing about this is that, taking this credit doesn't impact your taxes when you file next year. It's not like you're going to lose anything by taking these COVID-19 checks, which is nice. You did, however, phase out. And what the IRS did is they looked at your most recent tax return, whether it's 2018 or 2019, they looked at your AGI, and you phased out. If you are an individual, you started to phase out of that check starting at 75. If you were a married couple, you started to phase out starting at 150. Eventually, as a singleton, if you reached 99,000, you completely phased out and you got no check. And if you were 198 as a married filing joint, that was your complete phase out threshold as well. So if people say, well, I didn't get my check, or the check wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be, check their AGI. That might be the most likely culprit. If they didn't get a check at all, they thought they were supposed to, see if they actually filed a 2018 or 2019 tax return. Because if they didn't, the IRS doesn't really know about you. You can still get your coronavirus check, but you have to jump through a few fiery hoops on the IRS website to get that kind of thing. I don't know if the second round of $1,200 checks is going to be exactly the same thing as we saw earlier. I think it probably will be very, very close, but we'll see. But let's face it. Let's be honest. $1,200, $2,500 or $2,400. That's great, right? I'm not going to turn that away. But it will only take you so far. If you're, sole breadwinner for a family of four, you might get $3,500. That's great. But if you're out of work, you've got a mortgage, you've got rent, you've got a car note, you've got power bill, you've got grocery bill. Kids might be going back to school, got to buy new school clothes and supplies and things like that. That's only going to go so far. So what Congress did is, they said, well, look, you can tap your IRA. You can tap your 401k, even if you're under 59 and a half, and you don't have to pay a 10% penalty to get there. To do that, you must be what they called a qualified individual. And the IRS has changed this definition of qualified individual since CARES first came out back in March 27th. The definition of qualified individual is much different, and frankly, it's much broader. It includes more people now than it did back when CARES was first released back at the end of March. So today, to qualify as an individual, and I think you'll see what I mean here in a second, to qualify as an individual who can tap their IRA or tap their 401k, even under 59 and a half, with no 10% penalty, you have to fall under one of two criteria. Either one, you, your spouse, or your dependent must have tested positive for COVID-19. You don't have to be sick. You don't have to be in the hospital. You just tested positive. If that happened, then you're in. Now, I hope nobody on this call and nobody tests positive. if you don't test positive, there's another way to get this money out, and that is if you, your spouse, or a member of your household experienced adverse financial consequences as a result of being quarantined, laid off, furloughed, having your hours cut. If you're, say, a commission-based employee, like some of us on this call may be, if you haven't your hours cut or you haven't been laid off, but you've seen a loss of pay or self-employed income because of COVID-19, if you had a job offer rescinded or delayed, or if you can't work because you can't find childcare right now for your kids, or if you're a business owner who had to shut down or reduce hours of your employees, any one of those criteria, you can qualify for that withdrawal. So you can see it's very, very broad. It's very, very easy to fit the definition of qualified individual and get that money out. Now, what's really nice about it is if you take that withdrawal, and it's limited to a max total of $100,000 across all of your qualified accounts, you don't have to take out only what you're out of pocket. Right? If you qualify, you can take out the full $100,000, even if you're only out of pocket $5,000, $10,000, and you have, say, $60,000 in your IRA, you can take out the full 60 if you want to. And they made it really nice in that when you take the money out, there's no 10% penalty, but there is ordinary income tax due. But you have 3 years to pay that back if you want to. So if you took out $60,000, and you say, look, I'm not going to pay this back in the IRA. I need it. I'm going to spend it. I have to cover all these bills. I'm just going to keep it. You can spread out the tax liability over 3 years. So in my hypothetical, you took out $60,000. You could recognize $20,000 in the first year, another $20,000 in the second year, and then the final $20,000 in the third year to spread things out and make it easier for you. Or if you say, I wanted to pay it back into my retirement account, you can. You can put it back and you have 3 years to do that. So Congress made it really, really easy for you to get the money out of your qualified account if you needed it, but they also made it really, really easy for you to put it back in as well. And what's really nice about this opportunity from a planning standpoint is that once your client has taken the money out and they've paid their bills, they've paid their car note, they paid their mortgage, they kept the lights turned on, and they're called back to work. Their state goes to phase 3, fingers crossed. They're called back to work, and they didn't spend the whole $60,000. And they're back on solid ground. They have their head above water. They found out, well, I only really needed 20 of that. You can put the $40,000 back in. You do not have to put the $40,000 back into the 401k. You do not have to put it back into the same IRA you took it from. You could find a new qualified home for that money. So if you took it out of the 401k and now you want to put it back in, you can put it back into an IRA if you want to. And you have 3 years to make that decision. And where we come into play as an annuity company is that there are some very, very important things for retirees or people planning for retirement. The big thing right now with what happened with the markets is principal protection. I'll make sure I don't lose my money to market losses. There's income protection. Once I do retire, I want an income guarantee to make sure I never run out of money. And finally, there's legacy protection. I want to make sure that my wife, my husband, my kids, whoever, gets something back when I die. So principal protection, income protection, legacy protection, all three of those things. If the 401k was not giving the client those things that they needed, maybe putting it back in the 401k is not the best place, or maybe back into an IRA is the new best home for that money, because companies like Lincoln can offer your clients in the IRA principal protection, income protection, and legacy protection. So if you have those opportunities where the client took money out and they want to put it back into a qualified account, maybe an IRA is the best home for that money. And if they want those protections and those guarantees, that's where my friend Craig comes in and can let you know all the things Lincoln can offer. So that's my little commercial there. Last thing I'll do to wrap up is RMDs, because I get a lot of questions about this. Last thing the CARES did is they let you take out RMDs, or not take out RMDs, I should say, for 2020. Nobody has an RMD for 2020. IRA bennies don't. 401k participants don't. IRA owners don't. No one has one. You can take money out if you want to, but you don't have to. And if you did take money out, if you did take out money as an RMD and you realized, I thought I had to take out, I didn't realize it was voluntary this year. The IRS lets you put the money back in as late as August 31st of this year. Now, in this case, you do have to put it back into the account you originally took the RMD from. But if you have an IRA owner who didn't want the RMD this year, but maybe they were set up on an automated schedule where it just comes out every January, for example. Say, well, look, if I had known about CARES, I never would have taken this out. I would have canceled the auto payout. They can put it back in, and then they can avoid the tax liability on that RMD they never wanted in the first place. Same thing with bennies. If a benny took a stretch RMD out, and they really didn't want to this year, they can put it back in as well. And again, the deadline for that is now August 31st. So on that time, that was a lot of talk, a lot of nerdy legislative talk and tax law talk. But I think you can see there are a lot of great opportunities to call up every client you have with a qualified account with you, and every prospect you might have with a qualified account, and make sure they understand, how things have changed with Secure and CARES, and leverage those changes to make sure that the money goes to who the client wants, when the client wants, and how the client wants. So these pieces are available to you. Please take a look at them. I hope they're helpful. I want to thank you all for your time today. And I'm going to hand the floor back to my friend Craig.
Thanks, Bob. And I just kind of wanted to sum things up before we close things out here. Just wanted to kind of ask a couple questions. If you think about it and you think about the market environment that we're in today, if you were to ask your clients or even go to a room of prospects and ask them this question, if you could have 3 wishes or 3 attributes you like to have in an ideal investment in today's market environment, what would they be? And typically the big 3 are, I want to protect my money, I want to grow my money, have upside, and I don't want to pay any fees. Very rarely can you find investments that can check the box on all 3 of those, and a fixed index annuity really does. If you think about the 2 emotional drivers of pretty much any investor out there, it's going to almost be like a pendulum or like a teeter-totter. On one side of it is going to be that fear of loss. I don't want to lose money, because as I get older and I'm either in retirement or I'm getting closer to retirement, I have less days ahead than I do behind to make up some of those potential losses. So I want that protection on my money. But at the same time, on the other side of the spectrum, on the other side of that teeter-totter, is that fear of loss opportunity, or the opportunity to make more money. If we think about where most clients would typically go with their safe money right now, the bank instruments are paying nothing. So you got CDs that are paying almost nothing at this point. They say fixed income or bonds over the next 10 years are projected to pay out between 2 to 3% at best. And obviously, if they look at the market, do they really want to have 100% of their money in the equity markets and have all that volatility and risk? So right now is a perfect opportunity to get back in front of clients, maybe look to start safeguarding some of those assets with a fixed index annuity. Lincoln's got some very unique indexes with our Fidelity strategy, as well as our uncapped S&P 500 index with the spread. All very unique indexes, very well built for the environment that we're in. And obviously with the Benny IRA stretch that we're doing, that's we do Roth and partial Roth conversions, and of course the COVID-19 withdrawal option that you can utilize a Lincoln fixed index annuity with. So with that, I'm going to throw it back to Neil to close things out, and hope everyone has a great rest of the week.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Craig. Thank you, Bob. Excellent information. Really, guys, there's a great content here that we learned, and maybe we can use that to uncover some opportunities. But if there's anything you take away from here today, is when you have a beneficiary IRA opportunity, think Lincoln. Lincoln will accept those. Other companies are not. Again, think Lincoln, beneficiary IRA, the post-secure environment. The GoToWebinar handouts section was not working at the beginning, so if you tried to download those, you got an error. So just contact your internal wholesaler here at Financial Markets. They'll be able to get you these 2 documents that Bob went over with us here today. With the information provided, guys, this is an excellent time for beneficiary review. On our website at fmiAgent.com, once you log in there and you go to the toolkit, we have a client review section. There you're going to find sample letters, sample emails, brochures, and worksheets that you can use with your clients to really establish that beneficiary review practice. And I really encourage you to really take advantage of that, especially within this new environment. I had one question, and there's also a question here from the audience. Bob, if in this kind of a particular situation, if an individual were 70 and a half in 2019, they have until then the following year to take their RMD. They have to take the following year and their 70 and a half year. That's generally correct.
Right. Those rules really haven't changed. So yes, if you turn 70 and a half in 2019, your first RMD is due at the end of 2019, but you can push that back to April of 2020. And then you have your next RMD at the end of 2020. That is correct. Those rules have not changed.
Is that April of 2020 RMD not required due to the Secure Act or the CARES Act?
That's right. That's right. So you don't have to take it for, well, frankly, you don't have to take either this year, right? So you could waive your April, kick back first RMD, and you could waive your 12/31 RMD as well. So you could float both of them this year because of CARES.
Unique opportunity for 70 and a halfers in 2019, I guess, that didn't take that RMD. Right. Okay, great. Another question here: this question says, does the 10% CARES waiver apply to pre-59 and a half non-qualified annuity withdrawals?
It does not. CARES didn't really touch non-qualified contracts at all. Not that they were really looking to parse things down that much. It was really just getting to your qualified money. So unfortunately, no, it doesn't help with the non-qualified side of things. Although we do have options at Lincoln that lets you touch non-qualified assets prior to 59 and a half with no 10% penalty. I won't get into that now, but if you do have a situation like that, please reach out to Craig, and he can walk you through our options.
Excellent. Very good. Well said. All right, so we'll move on to, I don't see any other questions coming in here, so we'll move on to the drawing. So everybody that's on the call, their name has been placed in the hat, and whomever is drawn here has to be on the call to be able to win. And we'll see who the winner is. And the first drawing, it shows Rick Altoff. Let's see if Rick is on the call. So congratulations, Rick, for winning the $50 Amazon gift card here today. Hey, folks, this webinar is being recorded. This will be posted on our YouTube channel, so youtube.com/fmiAgent. And so go check that out. There's lots of content there that can help you in your practice. And a big thank you to Lincoln, Craig Geiger, and Bob for the presentation here today. Anything else to add, gentlemen, in closing?
I think
we're good. Thank you again for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great and prosperous day.